Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to the Rug Company and with Anna Beeber from Alexandra Champalimaud. So thank you, Anna, for joining us today.
Hi, thank you, James.
Here with us. So do you want to just tell a little bit about yourself? And I know a lot of people know your firm, but a little bit about the firm as well too before we get into the topic.
Yeah, sure. So as James said, I'm Anna, and I am with Champalimaud Design. We are a multifaceted firm. We work in the hospitality sector. We do a lot of commercial work, high-end show flats and residences in multi-family buildings. We also do a lot of residential work and restaurants, and we have a pretty booming product line as well, and are partners with the Rug Company on a handful of ventures, which is a great addition to our work and to my work as well, because I work with Alexandra on our product line. And so I've had the pleasure of working with the Rug Company and Champalimaud for about a decade. So it's been sort of a fun run.
It's always great when we do any projects with you. And recently we launched a new hand tufted product in addition to the beautiful hand knotted range that we have. And I think today what we wanted to talk about is just about materials and applications to different projects. And we're going to show some amazing projects that Champalimaud has done, and Anna has led many of them, and to show how you can use different kinds of rugs in multiple kinds of settings. And of course, custom as well too. So the Rug Company, we love to do custom in addition to our great stock collection, and it's always fun working on custom projects. Our designers and our sales guys love custom as well too. So,
yeah.
So good. I'm here at our 200 Lex showroom. I was just saying to Anna that opened right after the lockdown was lifted in July. So it's our new showroom. It's a great space. So for those of you who come to New York and come to 200 Lex, please visit us here. We'd love to see you and show you some of our great new things. And today I thought we would start by just talking about a little bit around the collection that I just mentioned, to show that beautiful new hand tufted collection, and to talk a little bit about the applications of when you would use hand knotted, when you would use hand tufted in your projects, and how this opens up just a much wider ability for you to work with the Rug Company on different kinds of projects, whether they be residential or hospitality.
Yeah, well, James, I think you joined the Rug Company right after I had finished installing an apartment on Park Avenue here in the city. And we had installed something like 7 or 8 Rug Company rugs. Every rug in the apartment was from the Rug Company. And most of them were silk. In fact, there was a white silk rug that went into the bathroom. And so it was one of those extraordinary projects that we don't get every day. And we were having lunch, and I said, you know, it's so easy to shop at the Rug Company. I love bringing clients in there. The service is great. But I feel like there's something missing sometimes, because not every house can be the Rug Company in every single room. Other houses have kids and dogs and stairs and back halls, and they need something a little quieter. And while the product that I see, can go into every salon and every master bedroom and the main spaces, what about something that can live in those spaces where you just need a more simple moment? And so we started chatting over the course of a couple years, and that's really where our Tufted collection was born, out of this desire to make it really easy to customize, so that we could change the colors. There's only 3 colors in each pattern. And so anybody, any designer can, easily pick 3 colors that work together and put them in the palette. And often one of the things that's frustrating about customizing a rug is that it's hard to get the colors. Like I don't know if you can pull up the Monarch the red monarch Alexander McQueen rug that we did on Park Avenue. But that's an extremely complicated rug that has, I don't know if you know how many colors off the top of your head, but like 20 something, and they're all applied in very specific zones. And getting that customization correct actually took us quite a bit of time. And so when we were starting with the Tufted, we wanted to just find something that was a little bit simpler that, oh yes, here we go. So these were two identical, massive, 100% silk customizations of the Monarch rugs. And it's amazing when you get the client who wants to do something like this and has the budget to afford it, but it's not every client, as you know, sadly. That's another.
That rug looks absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
I'm sure the client loved it too.
They do, yes, yes.
So when we look at your, if you want to bring up, Emma, the Tufted, when you look at the collection, and I was so impressed when you started working with that and using the Tufted, but you would also use the hand knotted as well in the project. And any sort of tips to talk to about where you would use this product and when you would use some of the other hand knotted products like the Monarch that you just mentioned. And
sure. These Tufted, they feel amazing. First of all, it's not a lesser product. It's the pile is very high. They feel luxurious. They're either 100% wool or 100% silk or a combo. So it's not that you would put this, in the garage or some space where you really, it's not a replacement for some awful product. It's actually just a choice. These products are faster to make. So when you're on any sort of hurried timeline, that usually works out really well. Or I find that I like to use them when there's a quieter moment that you're trying to solicit. So I often will use them actually as either a wall-to-wall or an area rug in a guest room or some room where you're just trying to create a little bit of a quiet energy. They're great as stair runners as well, or hall runners. And then also any sort of, large space where scale becomes really critical, where you don't necessarily want to have a big pattern, or you're not trying to make a statement with the graphic, but you're just trying to have a really nice, neutral, very luxurious palette on the floor. They work out really well. And interesting, so this one that's coming up now, Stripe, this is actually a loop pile, whereas the others we've seen are cut. So this one it's a little bit rougher underfoot, so it works out great. Like in a rec room, you don't sink down into it, for example. So it's a nice textural shift.
And I think the other nice thing about this collection is it gives the opportunity for wall to wall. So obviously it's a little bit more difficult to do with the hand knotted wall to wall, but this works out beautifully. I've seen this installed in several projects, and it looks just amazing in wall to wall as well as area rugs.
Yes, it really does. This pattern we've actually used quite a lot. And it's interesting how, talking about customization, how color really does change the atmosphere of a rug. And of course, you know this, James, with your hand knotted as well, but the one on the bottom left that's on the screen, for example, that's a very quiet rug. It almost disappears, whereas the top right really has some life to it, and the diamond pattern becomes much more optical. So it is fun to play with colors when you're working in, on any sort of design, because you can bring in a different atmosphere quite easily by just shifting the color. This is a great rug. This one in the bottom left here with the gold. So the rug is 100% wool, and then every so often you have this 100% silk triangle in gold, and then the blue, there's like a slightly darker blue where it's silk, and similarly with gray. And it's a very simple pattern, and then it's just elevated by that little token of silk and the slight intensity shift in the color. This rug is very easy to use. This I've used a lot actually. This green, it's green and gray. It's actually like an English race car green. And it's the classic, the color is classic. Yeah, all of them. These work out really well. They're kind of those, no-brainer rugs. Like you just know they're gonna work.
And then you can choose wool or silk, or you can blend
Yes.
them. And I think it's a very versatile
Yeah,
collection.
yeah.
Wonderful. Good. Well, thanks for giving us your thoughts on that. One thing that
Yeah.
always comes up when we talk to designers is when do you start with the rug, and how much is the rug important to the room or to the hospitality project?
We start at the beginning with rugs because frankly, we always try to think about the large surfaces first. So in any room, whether it's a ballroom or a guest room, you really have to consider the floor, the ceiling, and the walls. And in that way, it's almost an architectural element because it's providing the foundation for everything else that you're doing on top of it. And so getting some feeling about what the rug is going to be right away and getting buy-in from the client becomes critical. And that can be, that's really encapsulating all aspects of the rug, whether it's the quality, the price point, the design, the color, all of those things have to be factored in from the beginning.
And when we look at making it easier for you guys to do your job, one thing I did want to just talk about briefly before we go on to the contract projects is just our own build your own custom rug designer that we released on our website. Because as you showed the Monarch, you see how beautiful it looks in different colors and different materials and textures. So Emma, do you want to just show a little bit about the custom rug, and then we can show some of the custom project applications that that Anna has used as well too. But it's a very simple tool. It allows you to pick your color. It allows you to pick your size and soon the material. So if you want to change from silk to wool or vice versa, if you have a bigger budget, that's always great. It allows us to.
That's such a valuable tool because as a designer, often you're showing, you're going to a client meeting with your arms filled. You have one sample that's for quality only, one sample that's for pattern, one pile of palms that's for color, and often a piece of paper that actually has the design on it. And it's very confusing. Not all clients can wrap their head around all of those elements. So having a quick tool online that allows you to very quickly and easily put together a photograph of what the thing is going to look like, while you don't have it in your hands, that's a great tool to supplement the sample that then is, living in your hand.
And not to get too technical, but we do have the palm reference numbers on the colors as well too. So for those of you that have the palm boxes, it's a great tool to easily change the color and know exactly what it's going to look like.
Right. I mean, imagine if you're presenting to a client who is afraid of color, and you have a picture of this. It's very difficult to explain. No, this rug looks so simple in grays and whites. And so being able to quickly adjust that look, I mean, it's a completely different product. So being able to make those adjustments quickly is a terrific thing. Can you also change scale in that build your own, or that happens separately?
So that can happen with the design team, but obviously when you change the size, the scale will change as well too.
Okay. Yeah, that's also critical.
Like a micro stingray, then that would be done with the design team here. Yeah. So but that's an easy thing to change the scale as well too. Why don't we look at some of the projects that you guys have done, which are amazing. I always love seeing your projects, and see some of the custom in there as well too as we projects.
Sure.
So we're going to start. Emma will bring them up for us, and Anna will speak to some of the projects, both residential and hospitality as well.
Oh, this is a great project. This was, we installed not even a year ago. in Montana at the top of a mountain in Yellowstone. And the rug is enormous. James and I, we were talking about cranes lifting rugs before. I think this rug had about 25 men carrying it in. The roll, I think, was about 6 feet in diameter. And we really struggled. This room is very dynamic. It has a lot of furniture in it, but the client wanted a palette that was very simple. And so in the end, we took inspiration from the abstracted bark patterns of Ponderosa pine trees, actually. And we experimented with a lot of construction styles and ended up with this one in the end, which is both a cut and looped linen. So you can see that the pattern is actually formed from the cut, and the loop is the background, and it's kind of got a rough feeling, which the client also was looking for. A lot of times when you change, it's interesting when you're designing a custom rug and you're able to change the construction very easily from one thing to the next, it really changes, I mean, it transforms the entire rug. So often when I'm working with your team, James, we'll test it out in 3 or 4 different, if we have the budget and we have the ability to, actually move in and out of silk and linen and wool and raffia, et cetera, we often will test out a rug, a pattern in 3 or 4 different construction types because it impacts it so tremendously.
What was it about the linen? It looks amazing, that rug in linen. What was it about linen that you felt was right for that project?
Linen is a very white fiber. It can get white. Whereas, as we all know, wool, unfortunately, can be very yellow. And so if you're trying to get a very cool tonality to the rug and you're forced to use wool, often you won't get that same cool tone. And it was very important in this space to have all cool tones. Any warm tones just looked awful.
It's just a beautiful, beautiful space. I just love that. I could see myself there now.
Yes. I wish.
Yes.
Yeah. And then you were, Emma had pulled up briefly that's a stingray. Actually, this is a good example of one of the rug we were just looking on what do you call it? Build your own. So this is stingray. The pattern is actually in a very pale gray, but it has a lot of purple undertone, which unfortunately you can't see too well in this photograph. And then it's all 100% wool. And the scale, again, is massive. So we increased the scale of the fronds here. Scale, of course, when you're doing anything, whether it's, you have to be aware of the scale. And often we will print on our huge plotter, a big section, and lay it out on the floor so we kind of understand what you're looking at. Because if you're looking at an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper that's showing you a 50-foot by 25-foot rug, you simply can't grasp what it's going to look like in reality, and how it plays with the furniture and all of that.
And then if we look at some of the contract spaces, like I wish I could see your Raffles Hotel project, which was a triumph, and I think we have a couple of pictures of that with
yes. The Raffles Hotel was such a great project on so many levels. But one of the things that was really amazing is that we were able to use some really sophisticated and expensive rugs in a handful of areas. They really felt it was important to splurge. You don't often get that opportunity when designing a hotel. And so here is one of your patterns with Nisha Crosland, actually, and we adjusted the colors. And, we often, obviously we love using our own rugs through the rug company, but we often use all of your other designers as well, because you have such a good range. And frankly, we don't have time to develop new patterns for every project or reinvent the wheel when they're so great already. So yeah, but the Raffles was a tremendous project.
When you look at color and you're in high trafficked areas, what is your thinking for commercial projects on the use of lighter colors?
Well, you actually, there's two no-nos. Dark is a no-no and light. Because dark shows in the same, black shows everything, and so does white. So that said, often you want to create the mood of a light rug or a dark rug. And so what we tend to do, twisted yarns become your best friend. And so you just twist two tones. Often you'll, if you have a pale sort of creamy tone, you twist it with something that's more closely resembles dirt. and and then when somebody treads on it with their dirty boots, you tend not to see the dirt so much. But it's not just dirt, it's hair, it's lint, it's dog hair, it's the whole litany of things. So you have to often any sort of patterning, stippling or small sort of patterning, you can have a big graphic, but within that big graphic, you have to have tonality within it that, is sort of either twisting or stippling so that the dirt gets lost and you don't see it in a big swath of white or a sea of black.
Yes. And some clients also don't want to have 100% silk because they'll think about the sort of tracks you can see on that. What are your thoughts on that?
That's, silk is a tricky material because there's tracks from foot, there's tracks from the vacuum. It also sheds, for a couple of years, and you have to go back and sort of clip some of the longer threads at times. And it's very directional. From one angle, it looks totally different than from the other. And so when we're working with silk, all of that's important to bring up to the client. And generally, you either have a client who is excited by the fact that it's a natural fiber, and in the same way that a leather patinas or a bronze patinas, they like the idea that silk really shows its character and nature. And it's underfoot, and so it's a tremendous quality. But if they're skittish about that, but they still want the luster, because silk has such a luster, and you can use colors in silk that you wouldn't be able to use really in wool, because like, for example, we did a rug one time that it was a custom shadow. Unfortunately, we never photographed it, so you don't have the picture, but it was a custom shadow, and it was pink, orange, and gold. And you could never do that combination in wool. It just wouldn't work. But there was something about the luster of silk that really made it dynamic and gorgeous. So if you want to have that, you can often mix it with wool. And so you have the traffic areas, would be wool, and then you just have pops of silk sort of infiltrating it in little palms or, some sort of graphic display.
And we love, of course, at the rug company to do, the wool base with silk, as Anna was just describing through the rug.
This rug, this is Dahlia, which if you look carefully, you can see there's this sort of white flower going through it. And often when we customize this rug, we'll do the background, which is the majority of it, in wool. And then we'll just do that big flower frond sort of going through it in silk. And not only does that help with the wear and sort of how you walk on it, but it also helps with the price enormously.
That's beautiful. Where is this project?
This is Fisher's Island. This was a show flat that we worked on in Florida.
That's great. Good. Any other ones that we're going to show before we go on to some of our questions?
This is, we were talking about quality and how the rug transforms so dramatically when you change the fiber and the weave. So this was for a project in the Bahamas, and you can see these rugs. This is Stingray again. This is made out of these are wool durries. And so they're very thin, obviously. They're much more fitting to the location. But we decided to use wool because we needed them to be durable. This is a lobby of a hotel, in fact. And so they needed to be cleanable and really hold up underfoot. So it's always fun to play with pile heights and weave techniques, not just color and scale.
Great. Wonderful. All right. Well, we'll move on to some of the questions, especially highlighting on the contract space. We
Yeah.
have some really good ones, if that's okay.
Sure.
And I guess a little bit back to the question about high trafficked areas in hospitality. Do you ever go bold? Do you go bold and brave, or do you always tend to play it safe more? Or is there? I guess it depends on the project, but
Yeah.
blogs.
Both. We do both. It depends on the project and the client and what the end user is gonna. We did a ballroom recently, actually at the Beverly Hills Hotel, and the carpet is pretty wild. The colors are bold. It sort of looks a little bit like camouflage. But when you think about that environment and you consider if you're hosting a wedding party, you know, you have most of the rug is covered by tables which are draped by cloth, and the walls are very dynamic and the view is dynamic. And if we would have put something very simple on the floor, it would have just felt a little bit sad in a way. So often you just have to be mindful of what the use is and what's the furniture going on top. I was talking before about that custom shadow that was all of the colors of pink and orange. And on top of that, we placed two beautiful white mohair sofas with like really tailored tufting and this huge coffee table with, I think it was Calicotta gold, which is a mostly white marble. And so everything on top was very white and calm, and therefore it really demanded a rug that had some life. So yeah, we do.
You know, I love the Beverly Hills Hotel, and it's one of my favorites. And I'm curious personally just to know when you look at that kind of a project, because to me, you know, the palm tree wallpaper and the pink and all of the sort of very tropical feeling. How do you move that on and make it feel more still Beverly Hills, but still, you know, modern and fresh?
Right. Well, I think the designers on that project actually did such a great job because it is timeless and it has these elements that are so iconic. But you're right, you can't live in some sort of pastiche. And so when we did the suites, the bungalows, they actually each had a theme from one of the celebrities who had stayed there. So there was the Elizabeth Taylor bungalow and the Frank Sinatra bungalow. And the designers that worked on the project really went back and looked at the history of each of these individuals and really came up with a thread that was a little bit unexpected and a narrative that was really engaging to that person, that was easy to translate into a design that's much more timeless than the pastiche of the celebrity themselves. So for example, the Frank Sinatra bungalow, you know, he lived in the desert, and so in Palm Springs. And so the space was very much a reflection of that type of architecture. And, you know, I think it was, I think done pretty cleverly. And the results have been good. And there's a bunch of rug company carpets in those bungalows, in fact.
I've seen a few. Yeah, amazing. Which is your favorite? Do you have a favorite bungalow?
I love the Frank Sinatra bungalow because it has these beautiful tones, earthy tones, and sort of leather wrapped columns. And it's just it's a little bit unexpected, I think, and it feels a little bit understated, which I like. It's very calming.
Nice.
I think that's critical in a hotel room.
Absolutely. And you get the Frank Sinatra music.
Yeah,
Walking
exactly.
as well too, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Good. What one of the questions that someone submitted was just the trends in the hospitality sector, and is, you know, in projects, are you still looking at a lot of hardwood floors with rugs on top, or is wall to wall becoming more of a trend?
Well, I think that the trend for the last few years has been towards a lifestyle hotel, which I'm now so sick of hearing that word because it's the catch-all for anything that isn't a typical old style hotel. So everybody wants a lifestyle this, lifestyle that. But I think what often people are really looking for is a hotel that offers them experiences that go beyond the room and the bar and, you know, maybe a nice breakfast. And you can't get away with a beautiful bed and some nice soaps in the bathroom anymore. Like, you know, everything has to be taken up a notch. And so what we find is people really respond well when the hotel has more of a residential feeling to it. And often, you know, there are certain tools that we are using all the time to try to get a really residential feel. And what you just mentioned, the hardwood with the area rug on top, that becomes a really easy tool to employ if there's budget to lay a hardwood floor in the guest room and then put an area rug on top of it. And the other nice thing about that, of course, is that when those rugs need to be replaced, they can easily be replaced and you can still have the floor. And so it's a little bit more of an investment up front, but down the line, I think a lot of owners are enjoying that opportunity. And so we've employed that technique a handful of times, mostly, you know, if it's sort of a resort feel or a getaway, the idea of a getaway, I think that's when people really like this concept of lifestyle.
Great. On to a little bit about custom and bespoke. What are the tools? We spend a lot of time talking internally about tools that are important for designers and how can we make your lives easier? And we showed the online tool that we have, but what are those essential tools that you need when you're looking at designing a custom or bespoke rug?
Yeah. Well, luckily when you have a partner like you guys, you kind of make it easy on us. I think that we, in our own work, there's sort of two levels of custom product. There's the product that we bring to you that we want to use, and you know, maybe it's a simple sketch or it's some inspiration, and then we really rely on your designers to develop it and help us think through the scale and the pattern and the repeat and all of that. But when we're designing a custom product, particularly for our collection, we tend to get much more micro with it. And so really it's Photoshop. Well, first of all, you have to have a good idea. You have to have something that's inspiring you, whether it's a photograph or a piece of art or a piece of nature. You know, it's often a leaf or the way water moves or something that we've seen. And then we start translating that through Photoshop until we get really, you know, down to the millimeter in design. And then once we have our line drawings, it's really up to you guys to figure out how to make it, because taking something from the computer into a living product with natural fibers and, you know, hands that are actually weaving it is a technique that is so, it's I guess an expertise that is so specific, and really you have to rely on your partners to help you through that. So we'll often have a meeting with Stephen or the other sales folks and say, this is the design and this is the vision, and can you help us figure out how to achieve that?
And hopefully never disappoint once you get the
Never. Oh, the first strike-offs are often disappointing, but we don't give up. We have more meetings, we tweak our design, and you know, ultimately it's about getting to the vision that we wanted, and it takes a few iterations usually.
And is that because the color might be off, or the
everything? It's that we maybe didn't have the scale right from the beginning. It's that maybe we needed to we were just working on a custom rug a couple weeks ago where the colors were too segmented, and we actually had to add more colors because we wanted sort of an ombre within the pattern, and it was jumping too quickly from one shade to the next. So we had to add in more shades. But that's the kind of thing that when you print it off on the printer, it just looks fine. And then when you actually get it in reality, those are the things that are discovered. So it's really critical when you're working and doing custom rugs to build in enough time to have strike-offs and to really be able to go a couple of rounds, in fact, because you might not get it right. You probably won't get it right on the first one, and you might not get it right on the second. But I would say by the third, you're usually pretty good.
Yeah. And someone asked about color. At what point in the project do you decide on the color scheme? At what when do you consider color in the design? Um,
Typically, we start thinking about color pretty early. As soon as well, we always start with a narrative of some sort where we really build our concept in a pretty specific way that we then get our client to buy into. And then once the concept is established, we start pulling pieces of that and threading it into each of our selections. And so often within the narrative, there's sort of a built-in conversation about coloration and the feeling. Obviously, you're at this point maybe not speaking exactly about certain tones, but you're speaking about the ambiance that you're trying to create. Is it light and airy and fresh, or is it dramatic and sexy? And so all of those things really relate very specifically to color. So when we start going into our schemes, even if we don't have the rug selected, often we'll start working with carpet palms, and we'll start pulling various palms into our trays, and start thinking through how many types of colors. And so early is the short answer.
And I think that people are curious a little bit about where our rugs are made, and it's always worth pointing out that wherever our rugs are made, we love to put our own team watching the process, looking at the conditions of the workers are in. We partner with Good Weave to make our rugs in Nepal, where our hand knotted rugs are produced in Kathmandu, and our commercial line is produced in China with very great standards in terms of wool and the silk. And so that sort of brings on the last question I have for you, which is about what are the control specifications? How do you control your specifications once you turn it over in a contract project? Obviously, that you're working with the rug company, but all of a sudden, it could be that they want to move to another specifier. What is that like for you?
So a lot of times, for those who don't know, if you're working on a hospitality project, there's usually a purchasing agent, or sometimes the contractor themselves purchase the FF&E. And so we send out our specs into sort of the ether and hope that we get them back in a way that we recognize. A lot of it starts before we even obviously issue the specs, because we need to understand our clients and their budget. And if we know that they would be prone to copyright infringement or really undercutting our vendors, we would do ourselves the favor and our relationship the favor, and probably not spec you, because we don't want to end up with a nasty situation down the line. And then we always require submittals. So samples, drawings from the vendors, and this is a good way to catch any sort of major red flags. But ultimately, it's our job to deliver a project to our client on time and on budget. And so we have to do the due diligence to make sure that we're putting forward vendors who can meet those objectives. And sometimes it's happened that things have ended up in the wash and they don't work out properly, and we usually assist in making that right. We don't like our vendors to be screwed around with, frankly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's great. No, it's always a joy working with you and your team, and we're thankful to have you as a key part of the rug company. And
well, the feeling is mutual.
So thank you very much for today, and I'm sure everyone enjoyed hearing your insights into the world of custom and contract as well. So
thank you. And nice to see you. I know. Yes, I hope so. I'll come visit.
Okay, great. Thanks, Anna.
All right, bye. Thank you so much.